Hi, this is Runa, and you're listening to the Changemakers podcast, where we share tips, insight, tools, and stories from other changemakers designed to motivate you to become the change you want to see in your world. Make sure you join our Changemakers community at runamagnus.com/podcast. And now, this is your time to sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Jale. I got it right.
Jale, you're right there.
Jale. Welcome to the Changemakers podcast.
Thank you so much.
How about if you start off by sharing with us, who is Jale?
Oh, I love your questions already. This is so beautiful. Well, thank you for having me join you in your community. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be with you. Jale in Persian, it actually means literally a drop of morning dew on a rose petal.
Wow.
And my father's side of the family is Persian, and he really loved that name because it was actually from Persian is a very poetic, romantic kind of language, and he really loved that name because he said we're all one drop. The spiritual faith he grew up in is Baha'i faith, and he talks about each person is a drop from the ocean of eternity, and we all are a very necessary drop of that humanity. And so I think I'm one complete drop of a astounding, exquisite ocean of human beings, and we're all connected, and we're all made from the same substance, but we all have something very unique to reflect from within. So I think that's what I am. Just one drop kind of rolling in the world to connect with other drops and make an impact. And water molecules have a very strong bond when they connect. And it's a very strong union, but we're not bound together always. Like, we can move and flow, and we always find our way. We're very dynamic. And I think those are some of the qualities I have to find alignment with other drops to create more flow and more rhythm and more compassion, more trust and truth in the world. So,
you in many ways, do you know that, Jale, you actually described, by just saying your name, no coincidence here, you describe what we talk about in the No More Boxes movement. We're talking about moving people out of their boxes and what we call the human space, instead of just another box and another box and another box, but going into that human space. And that I could really see that drop becoming the ocean, being unique and special, but having a purpose as in that ocean. But God, I got goosebumps here.
Oh, thank you.
Yay, beautiful. Thank you. Wow, that was meant to be that question. Now,
thank you.
I almost want to call you Drop now. But I know that what you've been doing, you've been helping people to become leaders, and you've been doing leadership training. And I love how you're doing what you call designing your leadership style, and you as a person designing yourself as a leader. Can share with us, how did that come to you originally?
So this is such an interesting story. I love your questions. Thank you. My mentor in China, who was a 92-year-old doctor, said, if you want a really nice solution or an answer, find a really good question. And I think you must be always in the state of finding really cool solutions, because your questions are really beautiful. So I was in physical therapy school at the University of the Sciences in Philadelphia, and I was doing a case study and like a research project to see how does stress impact the healing process. And I chose a number of people who happened to be leaders in their departments and had a lot of responsibility, had a lot of amazing capacity. They were seen in their industry as leaders. They were also leaders in their community. They did a lot of volunteering. They were very committed to their families. So in every way that I saw, a leader is someone who really models the values and virtues to help everyone be lifted up and elevated and for everyone's highest good. So I felt like leaders were just someone who reflected certain qualities that were close to their heart and served others with those talents. And I started to see how incredible capacity could be actually in everybody. But there's some people who those qualities were nurtured more. They found alignment and they found encouragement and they found opportunities to really support and nourish those latent capacities and those really beautiful, beautiful talents that they've been cultivating for decades. Since we're little, we're sort of polishing these gems of inestimable value. It's a quote from Baha'u'llah. He talks about how each person is a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. And so as I was doing this research, I started to have really in-depth conversations with leaders and what are some of their stress points? What are some of the things that allow them to get over big hurdles, get over really intense situations economically or health-wise or dynamics with other people close to them, betrayal or people manipulating the truth. So I started to see really interesting patterns of there's not just one style of service-driven leadership. It was sort of unveiled that there are 9 leadership styles that are all very service-driven, humanity-forward, types of leadership styles. And so I started to understand each leadership style had their own unique language, their own unique set of strengths, some of the stress points that sort of took them out of their steadiness and created almost like doubt. They could be someone who was super confident and really moved in the world with a lot of confidence, but suddenly there would be something that would be like their kryptonite. And so I really found it fascinating to find these patterns, to see, oh wow, we can actually nourish each other's leadership style, but to be aware of in the leadership design, what are the elements that are helping the person stay in integrity with their leadership style, and they could therefore have even more of an impact without so much exhaustion, or they were actually being nourished in the process. Instead of service being one-sided, suddenly it kept it a very reciprocal, nourishing, two-way process, which was good for their health. It actually helped their healing from injuries happen faster. And so I just started to take that research and just kept expanding it as I went through my career with clients in my physical therapy world. And then something interesting happened. I was in this very interesting situation where I happened to be in a office where I was working with a lot of high-ranking officials in the military and a lot of diplomats that were going through this international program together. Just happened to be down the street from where my office was. And these colonels started discussing the possibility of me actually thinking of being a consultant one day and not staying in an environment where I had to wait for people to be really, really impacted by injury or health, but to start being more proactive in teaching these concepts. So they planted seeds way before I knew how to do that, but now I took their advice years later. So that's sort of how it happened. Yeah.
That is very interesting. I become curious to know, is it like an assessment that you can take to find out what is your leadership style out of those 9?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I developed, so this is like the 4th phase of the leadership assessment. So there's a link. I'd be happy to share it with you and your audience if anyone would like to take the assessment. Yeah. It gives like a really nice breakdown of the 9 leadership styles, which is I don't want to say the dominant, but it's just the way that you see the world. Your leadership style tends to be the lens that you see reality. Yeah. You see opportunity, and you have a vantage point because other people, that might be their blind spot, but you see it in high definition clarity. And so it's really important to have each person able to activate and integrate their leadership style as much as possible, because it then allows you to collaborate with other people and see how do we actually build on each other's strengths, not tear down each other because of our weaknesses. So I'd be so happy to send that to you. And it's about a half hour call with me after. So you do the assessment
Okay.
online.
So we will put that link in the below this video and in our, basically, I'm just thinking about all the different ways that to put that as I'm saying this.
Yeah.
But definitely we'll put that link so people can access that. In the times that we are living in today, with a lot of stress going on, a lot of changes going on, one of the things that I've noticed around me is that for many, it's becoming a very vague blur between being a leader and being a manager.
That's really good.
And it is, as basically people are, they are inventing things in many cases, moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
This blur is it seems to be problematic for many. What do you see are the biggest stress points in this industry? I mean, how is that affecting the workplace today when this is blurry in everything that we're doing?
Yeah, this is a really good question too. I've been doing a lot of extra calls with clients and their teams these last few weeks, particularly, and depending on where we're living, the country we're living could have slightly different situation. But I think as a humanity, like as a collective whole, this is affecting everyone in some way, emotionally, physically, financially, intellectually. We are definitely all in this together and very much unified in our capacity to be part of the solution. And we're also unified in our ability to, I had a mentor who said, don't be the log on the train track. Like, we don't want to become the barrier to the train moving forward, but we all have the capacity to take proactive steps to look out for not only ourselves, but for other people who we know and for people that we don't know but are connected to. And to answer your question about the stress points, what I've been finding with speaking with a lot of CEOs and team leaders in companies, and some of them are nonprofit, some of them are for-profit, but they're all very service-oriented in their mission statements. And the directors are, I think, under a lot of pressure. They're feeling a lot of stress just because they feel the burden of they have to find the solutions because everyone is counting on them. Everyone is relying on them to know what to do and when it will happen. And sometimes just the pressure of having to know before it's possible to know all the details. So they are very capable and they care so much about their employees. I feel really grateful to work with people who care that much to actually be stressed because they want the families of their employees to be taken care of. And so they're really taking wonderful processes into account and seeing how can we have people work from home? How can we maybe change the structure of our spending so that everyone will be guaranteed a paycheck for, so many months. And they're also figuring out the other stress point is, financial. How do they think multiple quarters ahead and go through with projects, or if they had, projects lined up and those, conferences or a lot of things are sort of being paused for now. So how do we continue to move forward based on what we know? So doubt and fear, and
they're coming up, of course. No, there's no. I mean, I think everyone understands that. What do you see is the difference today with the leader who goes? I mean, I'm just thinking about and it's so easy to go into the fear bit.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And that means that your vibration is so low at the time, and you go into almost personal lockdown. So what are your tips, or how would you say that people or leaders what can they do to keep themselves up there, I don't know if I can call it positive, but at least be in the vortex of possibilities, because we know they are affecting so many other people. that
Yeah.
will affect then the business and everything. What do you tell them? What are your tips?
Yeah, that's such a great question too. Yeah, one of the things that I do first is remind them of what they do know. So with all of the unknowns, which are valid and accurate, there are a lot of unknowns, and not to diminish the importance of those being figured out at some point, for sure. But first, to get the captain of the ship steady when the ship is in very rocky waters. If the captain and the person who is in charge of, taking care of the sending the orders or making the final decision, even if they have a team around them, if they're wobbling all over the place, it's really hard for everyone else to say, oh, this is how we're steady. Yeah. So I think first is really commanding our own power and not trying to overtake the fear, validating the fear and say, even though I have this fear and this isn't figured out yet, we're going to figure it out. And this is what I know now. This is what I do have control of now. I have this team member who has the leadership style of trust. So I know that this person is going to reflect honestly what they believe. I have this person in the team who is the leadership style of innovation and creativity. So I have someone on my team who naturally has the ability to see outside of the box and is able to go past what is currently happening. So really calling on their team to support them, I think has been a really, really powerful element of the people I've been working with, because they don't have to go in to their own shell and feel alone and feel like they have to keep the whole building up with their two hands or on their shoulders.
So it's really about keeping stock on all the talent that you already have.
Yes.
It's okay as a leader not to know everything, and that it's actually okay to ask for help. That's another thing that I'm hearing. So it's okay to be vulnerable. And when you do that and you're coming from a place that another thing that I'm hearing as well, that it's okay to not to have answers to all the questions, but allowing people to come up with the answers. That's another thing that I'm hearing with you, what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah, very well said. And because there are 9 styles of leadership, we only have to be masterful at one.
Yeah.
We have a lot of other capacities. We can learn about this. We can know about this. We're not abandoning the ability to continue to learn. But if we master our unique leadership style and then know, how does my leadership style collaborate with so much creativity, and it's very solution oriented, so that I can consult and have a really meaningful conversation for 10 minutes and hear someone else's vantage point, that it's my actual blind spot. They have this other perspective in HD Clarity. They can see how to create, there's a leadership style of connection. So community building and connection between people. So calling on those people in the team who naturally can think, this is how we can keep our team united when everyone's working separately, or if people are having fear. So we have people who can naturally just think of really interesting, practical solutions, so that we don't actually have to be burned in to figure out, how do we manage the team? How do we think of tech solutions? How do we think of innovative solutions? How do we think of this relationship between these two departments? And it would be super overwhelming. It is extraordinarily overwhelming to feel that you actually have to carry all 9 leadership style hats.
Yeah. And no one does that.
And no one can do it.
Jale, this has been perfect. This has been really, really insightful. All the information will be in our show notes, and how to connect with Jale and deeply on her website, as well as how to take the assessment. So I'm afraid our time is up. I want to thank you so much for being our guest. It's been a real honor.
For me, it's been such a pleasure. I'm so glad we got to connect, and thank you for your podcast and those people you're serving. I wish you continued success, and thank you for having these very meaningful conversations. It's really needed.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Was this podcast of value for you? I sure hope so. If so, feel free to share the love and give us your generous review on iTunes or Stitcher. And remember that you can always go to runemagnus.com to find out more about the Changemakers and how we can help you drive the change you want to see in your world.